New engine mount has arrived, so let's finish the installation of the KTM crash cage. We left off last time with the crash cage fitted to the bike, but unable to finish off the installation because one of the engine mounts was broken. Now it does seem these engine mounts are a little bit fragile, and the engine mounts, this is the new one, the replacement one, include a mounting for the radiator bracket, and I think that's what did it for this one, because the radiator here got pushed in, it got squashed, and therefore it would have pushed against this bracket on the other side, and I suspect that's what caused the failure right across here. But these do seem to be a failure item on these bikes if you crash them. There are some stronger ones out there, but they're quite a lot more expensive, so if I break this, I'm going to upgrade. But for now, I've got this, so we're going to fit it, and we'll see how long it survives. Because I'm doing the whole engine refit effectively with the new mounting bracket, I'm also going to take off the front sprocket guard, not lose my rubber mount, so that I can access the rear engine or the second rear engine mounting bracket. Tucked away under here, you've got an engine to frame mounting bolt. You've got the second one here where the crash cage is mounted, and you've got the two at the front, which are these. So why am I going to all the bother of undoing and loosening everything off? Well, the answer is because I think the engine might be sitting slightly askew in the frame as a result of the crash. Now, frame and engine are not what I would call a machine fit. There's no dowels holding it together, it's not a precise fit. This is a tubular frame, it's got a lot of welding on. It's highly likely that in the process of being made, every frame will tweak a little bit from the heat and not be quite the same shape, particularly since this is the cheap end of the KTM range. The frames are made, or the whole bike is made in India. I suspect the manufacturing tolerances are a little bit lower than what you'll find in the main Austrian factory with the more expensive bikes. End result is every frame is going to be very, very slightly different, not by much, maybe 0.5 millimetre, maybe less than that out on certain bolt holes. If you had a very precise fit in the bolt holes in the frame and in the engine, if that frame is slightly askew, you won't be able to get the engine mounting bolts in. So what I think they will do is they will leave the holes in the engine case a little bit oversized, so that no matter what the slight misalignment is, you can still get the bolt through. So the only thing that actually holds the engine precisely in place in the frame is the interference fit on the ends, the actual nut and the bolt at the ends clamping down against the frame. That's what holds it in place. Now, if you have that, so you've got a frame here and an engine sitting inside it, and the only thing holding it together are these bolts, if you smack the engine and kink it a bit, it can move slightly inside the frame, and it's still being held tightly in place. But now what you've got is you've got a frame that's sitting here and an engine that's sitting here, and there's tension between the two because it's shifted and it's trying to stretch the frame into a new shape, and it can't because the frame's pushing back. Now, that is what causes stress damage in the long term on the frames, and if I left it, eventually the frame mounting could actually crack through and break from the vibration. If you mix that stress with time, with corrosion, with the vibration of a running bike, and it's a formula for breakage. So what I want to do is I want to back all of that tension off, undo those bolts, and then clamp it back up so the engine will find a new natural position without all the stress that goes with it. It might be that it has bent the actual frame brackets. Looking at this, I don't think it's bent the frame. If it will have bent anything, it's where those brackets mount onto the frame, because they are just a bit of plate welded onto the frame. So it's possible for them to have kinked a bit. If they have, it's simply time to get a big hammer and knock them back to where they should be. But first I need to loosen off this engine bolt. So enough talking, let's get on to it. So on the other side of the bike, that engine mounting bolt hides down in here at the junction of the frame, and this nut on this end is a 10mm hex head, so that requires something like this. So it's effectively a big Allen bolt to crack it off. So I'm just going to crack that off to get it loose, and then we'll start the actual removal of the bits necessary to get that bracket out of there. So I've dropped the frame cage out the way on this side to give me full working room. I've also removed the radiator mounting brackets, or the bottom radiator mounting bracket on this side, so that's out the way, because this radiator mounting bracket is going to come off with this mount. Now you may also note that I'm not got the engine supported at this point. There's no jack underneath it, and that is as per the KTM service manual. You can have the engine, you put the engine in as soon as those back two engine mounts, mounting bolts are in place but not done up. Then you take the jack away, and that allows the engine, as I was saying, to find its own sort of space. Now I just need to get that out of the way. So there we go. So now we need to remove these. And fit them to our new bracket, or throw them on the floor, whichever is easiest. Now make sure we get this the right way around, so it'll fit like that. Obviously this is not a normal part of the installation of your crash bars, but they are a good indication of why you should be fitting or thinking about fitting crash bars of some description to your bike. Oh, and those threads are completely filled with paint. I really should get the tap out and run them in, but I'm just going to let the threads cut their own way in. When I reinstalled the radiator, I did have to bend this bracket up, which just provides more evidence than that that force was transmitted through to this bracket, and that's what caused the problem in the first place. And I'm going to fit the radiator mounting brackets after I've done all of this, because that's just fiddly, but it's just bolting them back into place. Although having said that, I am going to put this into place first. So get that into the radiator. And just get these threads started. So I've got these loosened at the top, and now the whole engine is a little bit loose in the frame, and any tension of it being caught by these engine mounts is now released. So now we can do the engine mounts back up. Now normally to putting the crash cage on you wouldn't have this problem because your bike wouldn't have been crashed, but if it had been, you need to follow these same steps. So stage one is tighten the front bracket, leaving the back bolts still loose. So the sequence for tightening is these two first, both sides, and then this one at the bottom. So tighten this to the frame, tighten then the bracket to the engine, and that will pull the front of the engine into a central position. 22 Newton meters. As usual, we'll just sneak up on that. So that's about 18. Let's run it to 20. $22. Just because there's two of them, let's make sure they both, there we go. So do that on the other side. With these mounted up, we can now put the crash cage back on and just use these top ones to hold it in place. Don't tighten these up because this still allows, there's still some flexibility, so some movement here to get that bottom bolt in. So let's put the bottom bolt back in and then we can torque it up. Now it takes a little bit of tweaking. I've undone these and put them back in after this is bolted in. So now the front needs to be torqued up to 49 Newton meters. Let's bring it up to 30 and sneak our way up to it. And now we can tighten up the back, and the back both go also to 49. And the top one is a little more difficult because it's a nut bolt on the other side. And finally we can just snug up the top mounting bolts. Don't forget the other side. Right, so crash bars are now installed. The bike's ready to go back on the road, or would be once I get the paperwork through. So thanks very much for watching, and I will catch you guys again soon.